When working the night shift at a small pizza shop in the heart of the city, I expected nothing more than a feeling of monotony. The whole street was quiet, especially on Tuesday nights, like a cold curtain draped over each dusty, greasy window pane. The city at that time was neither bustling nor lively. Only the sound of the wind sweeping through the rows of houses opposite and the faint, dim light cast from a few outdated street lamps. My shop, besides the glass door, plastered with a few old advertising papers, isn't much better inside. The smell of fried batter and burnt cheese mingles in the air into something both familiar and suffocating. The pale yellow walls hang faded menu boards, and the ticking wall clock makes the silent scene feel even thicker. I start my shift at 9 p.m. A few old regular customers come to buy pizza, but don't linger long. They all seem intent on leaving as soon as possible, as if staying longer would trap them in some kind of lingering bad luck. Just like that, by midnight, my phone was almost out of battery, chatting back and forth with a few friends to avoid feeling lonely. I usually like privacy, even surrounded by darkness. Tonight, still with the habit of sitting curled up by the stove browsing the internet, I didn't expect everything to change just because of a doorbell. The first bell rang, echoing through the eerily silent space. I quickly put down the phone, went to the counter, my eyes scanning outside. No one. Just a few leaves scattered at the door, blown by the wind. No shadows, no sounds, except the light, but rapid beating of my heart. I smiled softly, telling myself I must be imagining things. Maybe the wind just brushed against the doorbell. Then I turned back to my seat, my mind drifting into dull news reports. However, 15 minutes later, the bell rang again. This time, the sound was stronger and more decisive. I jumped up, a strange feeling rising in my heart, as if someone was watching me from outside the glass window. I quickly went to the counter, eyes scanning quickly, and once again, no one was there. I even stepped outside, my hair standing on end, as I faced the cold of the early morning, searching for any sign of life. It was still the empty street, yellow lights, and the blackness of the night stretching out. I stepped back, locked the door tightly, and returned to my seat. This time, my heart was beating faster. For some reason, I could no longer return to a calm state. It seemed that this overly quiet night was the beginning of something wrong. I tried not to think about it, but my body started to react. My neck stiffened. My hands and feet grew cold, and every small sound made me jump up and look around. Not until 2:45. The third bell rang again, piercing through the glass and the silent space to the bone. I stood up abruptly, this time not stepping outside but just shouting loudly, my voice trembling in the quiet night. "Is anyone there?" The only response was silence. Long, thick and sticky like grease, settled at the bottom of the sink. At that moment, I could not know that something dangerous had crept in, silently entering this small refuge, hiding among the shadows beyond my reach. When the clock struck 4 in the morning, I was preparing to check the shift money as usual, a habit of every night shift worker. I carried stacks of receipts, counted the cold, hard coins in the palm of my hand, when a chill ran down my spine, freezing me in place. "Someone is here." A voice echoed in my head, both clear and terrifying. The space seemed to freeze, leaving only the sound of my own heavy breathing. Then, a sharp pop sound rang out behind me. The heavy footsteps echoed steadily, each step seeming to reverberate through my ribs, through every vein in me. I turned around, and then the whole world seemed to freeze. My eyelids trembled, my breath caught in my throat. Only 2 meters away from me, a man stood silently in the dim darkness. His tattered black hoodie made him almost blend into the night, with only his bloodshot eyes and the cold aura emanating from his body standing out in a terrifying way. In his hand was a large knife, its shiny blade marked with old scratches. He said nothing, did not move, just stared at me intently, his gaze piercing through my skin, digging out all the fears hiding inside me into the light. I was trembling, tears streaming down. I didn't know since when. I tried to push the words out of my throat. Take the money, I won't say anything. Please, let me go. My mind was spinning, imagining all the robberies and murders I had ever heard about in the news, but he still didn't react. His jaw was clenched tight, his shoulders motionless, and the knife gripped more and more tightly, as if even the slightest impulse would make it plunge through my flesh. The wind outside blew cold gusts through the cracks of the door, and the 3 bell rings still echoed in my mind. I knew I couldn't run through the main door. He was standing between me and the only safe exit. In a moment of desperation, I looked toward the counter and made a decision. If I had to take a risk, I would go all the way. Summoning all my strength, I jumped over the counter, my body hitting the floor. The smell of floor cleaner hitting my nose, my head buzzing from hitting the edge of the table. But without thinking, I sprang up and dashed out the back door of the shop, the emergency exit that few people used, but at this moment, it was like a lifeline in a sea of death. I barely managed to unlatch the bolt and dash out, when behind me, he also leapt forward, his heavy footsteps pounding closely on my heels. I didn't look back, even though the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, signaling he was only a few steps away. In every horror movie, this is always the moment someone falls. But perhaps all those years working night shifts had given me a strange survival instinct. I rushed toward the main road ahead, where the flickering streetlights still held a bit of warmth. In my mind, only 2 words echoed endlessly. Run, run now. When I went out into the street, sweat poured down like a shower, my hands and feet each trembling from exhaustion and panic. The streetlights reflected my elongated shadow on the road, my pale face and dazed eyes. I took out my phone, trembling as I dialed 113. In just a few minutes, which felt like centuries to me, the police car sped over with sirens blaring. The officers got out, secured me in a safe state, their hands resting on my shoulders to reassure me, while I could only tremble uncontrollably, recounting the fragmented story through my emotions. They entered the shop, shining flashlights everywhere, but only chaos remained. Tables and chairs were overturned, pizza crushed underfoot, the cash drawer flung open, receipts scattered all over the floor. It seemed as if an unprovoked rage had been unleashed on this small room. But the culprit had vanished like a ghost into the misty night. I trembled, clinging to a police officer's shirt, pointing towards the parking lot. When they shone a light to inspect my car, everyone felt a chill. The body was covered with scratches, long winding carved lines that peeled the paint, crisscrossing like a spider web. It was not simply the marks of a theft, but like a message, like a threat sent straight to my deepest fear. He knows me, and he knows I will come back. They discovered the security camera, but strangely, the footage of him was very blurry, as if he were darkness itself, blending into every angle of light, only his fiery red eyes and jagged form appearing amidst the fading streaks of light. Every time I replayed the tape, I got goosebumps and a stinging sensation in my nose because I realized I had been watched for hours on end, on this very night that seemed the quietest. The police never found any trace of him. The city sank back into silence as before. The pizza shop still lit up every night, but it was no longer a safe cage, but became a haunting memory. I resigned just a few days later. I thought I had once dared to face loneliness, to face the long nights, the empty streets, and the smell of moldy dough. But in the end, there is something even more terrifying than loneliness. It is the cold gaze of a stranger in the dark, the presence lurking at the edge of the light that we can never anticipate. And someone once asked me, "Are you afraid of being attacked?" I am not afraid of pain, not afraid of losing money. What I fear most is being watched, being followed, haunted by a silent, persistent, nameless, faceless malice, hiding right where you think you are safest. And until now, whenever I hear the doorbell ring in the middle of the night, no matter where I am, I still shudder, as if that old past is reaching out to squeeze my heart once again. The night shift at the pizza shop is no longer just the smell of food and silence. It is an extended darkness, a rapid breath, a feeling of being stalked like a lost child. And I always wonder how many eyes are looking through that glass door at me inside. There are nights when I still think everything is just a dream, or some faint memory exaggerated by fear. But there are experiences that we can never forget in our lifetime, because they are etched in our minds by the sensation of a cold spine, by vague footsteps, by the faint smell of burning wood, mixed with the dampness of deep forest soil. That night, I came close to that boundary, where the ordinary turns into obsession. I started with a simple intention: to earn extra money from working as a part-time shipper. This is the kind of job people often do alongside studying, or when they need additional income. Those who have been through it know well. The later at night, the more orders there are, and the easier it is to get generous tips, especially when delivering to inconvenient places. That night, I planned to rest early, my body aching from running enough trips, but then a small desire won out. Over 400,000 for a long-distance delivery, worth trying one more time. I don't clearly remember the feeling when the small car slid onto the quiet road, only the sound of gravel crunching under the wheels and the shadows of the trees seeming to stretch longer on both sides. Ahead, a faded wooden sign appeared under the headlights: Forest Reserve. An old fence, the gate slightly ajar, unlocked, as if waiting for someone to step in. In my mind, I kept thinking there must be many camping groups, and there would be some groups of young people sitting by the fire, telling cheerful stories. The first strange thing was that everything was completely silent. Not a single other car, no laughter, no lights, except for the phone light I was using to look at the map. Just as I was about to call the guest, the phone rang. Suddenly in the darkness, startling me. A man's voice crackled on the other end, hoarse and haunting, saying briefly, "I am camping in the forest. If you go in, you will see the fire." Something was off, but I comforted myself. Never mind. I just deliver the food, get the money, maybe there will be a generous tip. Then I took the food bag, turned on my phone's flashlight, and stepped into the narrow, dark trail between two rows of mouldy old trees. The wind whistled softly, insect sounds echoed intermittently. With each step, I clearly felt the coldness of the night forest. Not the cold of the weather, but the feeling of absolute isolation from the outside world. The firelight gradually appeared in the distance. At first, it was just a small speck of light, but the closer I got, the more I realized there was no tent, no one sitting around, just a lone pile of burning wood amidst the tight grip of darkness. How strange, I thought to myself, my heart beating a little faster. The atmosphere around was so heavy that I felt as if I could hear my own heartbeat with every step I took closer. Then, crack, a sound like a dry, breaking branch echoed to my right. Like a self-defense instinct, I quickly turned around. At the edge of the light, a person silently appeared. He was tall, with hair unkempt, as if not cut for many months. A grey beard covering half of his gaunt face. The strangest thing was his eyes, the eyes of someone who had been lost away from the human world for too long. Eyes half wild, half clear, unblinking, staring deeply into me. The air was thick, and all my senses were stretched to the limit. In that instant, I only had enough calm to shout loudly, "I am a delivery person. I left the items here." My voice echoed through the forest like a desperate plea sent into the hopeless depths of the sky. The man remained silent until I bent down to place the food by the fire. At that very moment, he stepped fully out of the shadows, squinting with a crooked smile, a forced smile that was a mix of friendliness and warning. That was the voice that had called me. There was no mistaking it. At this moment, when I recall it, I still wonder what made me so bold. Was it nervousness that gave me courage, or was it an instinct warning me of the danger ahead? I no longer had the courage to say anything more. In my head, a voice screamed, "Run away now!" I jumped up, turned, and dashed straight into the darkness, not looking back even for a second. Behind me, his voice rang out, sending chills down my spine. "Come back, I have a tip for you." Warm and strangely gentle, a gentleness that made my whole body tense like a stretched string. Head down running, I focused only on the faint light from my phone, the muddy road beneath my feet, leaving all dangers ahead to chance. I saw the car in the darkness, the dim light reflecting off the rusty gate wall. A brief moment of peace flashed through me as I tried to open the car door, shoved the key into the lock, then dropped it because my hands were shaking. Picking up the keys, starting the car, I looked up and was shocked to realize the gate had been chained shut, a thick chain stretched across, completely blocking the way out. There was clearly no lock before. I had driven through easily when I arrived. So who closed the gate? Who locked that chain? Now in the darkness, the only thing left was fear. As I heard silent footsteps behind the car, drawing closer with each moment, I didn't look back. All my willpower focused on my feet. I pressed the gas, turned the steering wheel sharply, trying to maneuver the car through the tiny grass ditch by the gate, the tires screeching on the ground. If I had veered even a little, my car would have been stuck forever in a place where no one could hear the cries for help. Luckily, I got through, stepped on the gas, and drove straight towards the city without looking back. The next morning, I sat in the sunlight, checking the name of the reserve. The information available online was simple and clear. The reserve closes at 8 p.m. Absolutely no camping allowed, no night tours. It was then that I understood he was not someone who lived in the forest. He was there just to wait for people like me, naive enough, eager enough for the tip money from a stranger. To this day, I still can't understand what he intended to do. A sick joke, a madman, or something even worse? The truth is, I don't want to know the answer. That night, I risked my life for just one order, and luckily, I returned safely. But every time I think back, I just feel a chill and remind myself there are forests, there are darknesses, best not to step into them. Working the night shift at a data center seems like a job filled only with the steady hum of machines, rows of blinking lights, and the cold neon glow illuminating endless lines of servers. For many, this is a place of absolute silence, where people retreat and machines continue working tirelessly. But in truth, the chill of the night comes not only from the air conditioning, but also from the solitude of a building isolated at the end of a quiet road, with a dense old forest shrouded in darkness behind it. I have gotten used to that dull work schedule, arriving at 10 p.m., checking some parameters, confirming that all reports look good, then having only one task left: waiting and watching out for sudden system risks. Loneliness is everywhere. Sometimes I have to turn on Netflix, even open a horror movie, just to fill the emptiness with sound. That night started completely normally. I glanced over the screens with stable running charts, took a sip of cold coffee, then relaxed into an entertainment program. However, around 2 a.m., a time when everything is usually dead silent, an error notification suddenly popped up in the middle of the screen. A server in the corner of the warehouse, the area least frequented, suddenly lost connection. I held the flashlight and stepped out of the control room. The fluorescent lights on the hallway ceiling cast a chilling blue-green glow, illuminating each of my footsteps, echoing in the cold, empty space. The path to the storage room led past rows of large metal cabinets, then opened into a vast room, filled only with the sound of server fans whirring and lights blinking tirelessly. In that maze, I reached the faulty server. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was the power cord had come loose, lying exposed as if someone had just yanked it hard. I was curious because this type of cord is usually attached very securely, and it's almost impossible for it to fall off by itself. Feeling a bit uneasy, I plugged it back in, carefully checked all the connection, and restarted the server. Everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Before leaving the warehouse, I took one last look around. Finding nothing unusual, I intended to return to the room, comforting myself that everything was just due to the equipment being old and worn out. Stepping out into the hallway, I intended to return to continue the unfinished movie when a sudden sound rang out, a heavy bang that affected every cell in my body. It was the sound of a metal door slamming shut somewhere down the empty corridor, echoing off the walls and creating a chilling reverberation. I stood still for a few seconds, straining to listen, but everything then returned to the usual silence, except for my heartbeat pounding like a drum in my chest. Unable to find the cause, I returned to the control room. But after just a few minutes of tense silence, I suddenly heard a series of footsteps, fast, heavy, and distinct, echoing from just outside the hallway, as if someone was hurriedly fleeing. I opened the door and looked out, seeing only the long, cold corridor ahead, with clean, shiny tiles, but no sign of anyone. I took a few more steps, trying to listen carefully once again, and headed toward the end of the hallway where there was a large door that was usually locked tight. At that very moment, I caught a sight that sent chills through my entire body. In the distance, another door had just closed. There was no wind, no one else but me in the building at that time. With a heart full of anxiety, I approached that door, gently turned the handle, my palm drenched in sweat. The door opened to a little-known side corridor lined on both sides with a series of empty offices, places rarely passed by even during the day. The darkness was silent, with only the lights softly reflecting on each dusty closed door. I mustered all my courage to shout loudly, only to be met with terrifying silence. Just as I was about to turn away, suddenly, bang! A door next to me was thrown open by someone. From the darkness of the room, a tall man rushed out, barefoot, moving so hastily that he slammed hard against the doorframe. I couldn't see his face clearly, only felt a large shadow rushing towards me. Instinct told me to turn and run, feeling the footsteps of the man chasing closely behind. The heavy breathing, the sound of shoes pounding on the tiled floor, turned the once quiet corridor into chaos, heavy and suffocating. All I could think of was to run, really fast, to get away from the dark shadow pressing against my back. I rushed to the emergency exit, using all my remaining strength to push it open. The cold wind outside hit my face directly. I ran across the deserted parking lot, stumbled, but immediately got up, breathing heavily and trembling as I used my shaky hand to call the police. I looked back and realized that figure was not chasing me outside at all. Just a few minutes later, the police car appeared, its red and blue flashing lights casting onto the cold building. They searched everywhere, checking every room, every hallway, and even the server room, where I had just checked earlier. But they found no one, detected no signs of intrusion or the presence of strangers. The doors, the cameras, everything was normal. The next day, the company checked the entire surveillance system again. But for me, no one said anything more. No one could explain why the power cable fell, who closed the hallway door late at night, and where that large shadow had gone. Only I know that feeling best. The fear, creeping into every thought, every sleep afterward. Because I know the ghost of the building is not a spirit, but someone, flesh and blood, hiding in the cold data house for many nights without anyone knowing. If that night I hadn't checked the server, if I hadn't detected the strange signs, perhaps by now I would just be a silent name in the company's data file. No one would be able to tell the story of the ghost in the hallway.